I came back from deployment with PTSD. Severe. Couldn't sleep. Constant nightmares. Hypervigilance. Anxiety attacks. And then the sleep paralysis started. Every night. Multiple times. Seeing things. Feeling things. Entities that felt like the enemy. Like I was back there. Trapped. Helpless. It was hell on top of hell. But then something strange happened. After 6 months of nightly sleep paralysis, my PTSD symptoms started improving. The nightmares decreased. The anxiety lessened. The hypervigilance calmed. And my therapist said something that changed everything. Your brain is processing trauma through sleep paralysis. It's doing exposure therapy on itself. In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to show you the connection between trauma and sleep paralysis. Why PTSD patients experience it at 5 times the normal rate. How sleep paralysis can actually help process trauma. And why my worst symptom became my unexpected path to healing. Because sometimes the brain knows what it needs. Even when it hurts. Before I explain how sleep paralysis helped my PTSD, I need to tell you what happened during deployment. I was Army Infantry. Afghanistan. 2018. We were on patrol. IED hit our vehicle. I survived. 2 guys in my squad didn't. I was there. Saw everything. Tried to help. Couldn't. That image. That moment. It burned into my brain. And when I came home, it played on repeat. Every time I closed my eyes. Every time I heard a loud noise. Every time I smelled diesel or smoke. I was back there. Experiencing it again. This is PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Your brain can't process the trauma. Can't file it away as past. So it keeps reliving it. Keeps trying to make sense of it. Keeps failing. I got treatment. Therapy. Medication. It helped. Some. But the nightmares were constant. And then the sleep paralysis started. 3 months after I got home. I'd wake up paralyzed. Unable to move. And I'd see figures. Dark figures. Standing over me. And my brain interpreted them as threats. As enemy combatants. As danger. My heart would race. Adrenaline would surge. Fight or flight would activate. But I couldn't fight. Couldn't flee. Just like in the vehicle. Just like after the explosion. Trapped. Helpless. Watching. And the terror was identical. The same terror I felt during the actual trauma. And I thought I was losing my mind. Thought the PTSD was getting worse. But my therapist said something different. She said, sleep paralysis in PTSD patients is common. Very common. And there's a theory about why. I asked her to explain. And what she told me made sense of everything. Keep watching because in 2 minutes I'm going to explain the neuroscience of trauma and sleep paralysis. And why your brain might use paralysis to heal trauma. It sounds impossible. But the science is solid. Here's what happens in PTSD. Your amygdala, the fear center, becomes hyperactive. Overreactive. It sees threats everywhere. Even safe situations trigger fear responses. And your hippocampus, which processes memories and puts them in context, becomes impaired. It can't properly encode the traumatic memory as past. Can't create the timestamp that says, this happened then, not now. So the trauma stays in present tense. Always happening. Always immediate. This is why flashbacks feel real. Why triggers create full fear responses. Because your brain genuinely thinks the trauma is happening now. During sleep, your brain tries to process these memories. Tries to file them correctly. Tries to create the timestamp. And this happens during REM sleep. The dream stage. Where emotional memories get integrated. But in PTSD, this process is disrupted. The amygdala is too active. The memories are too intense. So REM sleep becomes traumatic. Nightmares. Night terrors. Reliving the event. And sometimes, The brain enters a state between sleeping and waking, where you're conscious but still in REM. Sleep paralysis. And here's the key. During sleep paralysis, your prefrontal cortex partially activates. The rational part of your brain. The part that can observe, can contextualize, can create distance between you and the experience. So sleep paralysis becomes a strange form of exposure therapy. You're experiencing fear. Intense fear. But you're also aware. Observing. Creating mental distance. Your brain is essentially saying, feel the fear. But recognize you're safe. Feel the helplessness. But recognize it's temporary. Feel the terror. But recognize you survive it. This is what exposure therapy does. Controlled exposure to fear. With safety. With awareness. And over repeated exposures, the fear response decreases. The memory becomes processed. Becomes past rather than present. And that's what my sleep paralysis was doing. Night after night. Exposure after exposure. Processing my trauma. Now I'm going to tell you about the turning point. The moment I realized sleep paralysis was helping rather than hurting. It was night 47. I'd been counting. 47 nights of sleep paralysis. Multiple episodes per night. And I woke up paralyzed as usual. Saw the dark figures as usual. Felt the terror as usual. But something was different. I recognized it. I thought, this is sleep paralysis. Not the explosion. Not Afghanistan. Sleep paralysis. And that thought created distance. Created context. Created safety. The figures were still there. The fear was still there. But I wasn't drowning in it. I was observing it. And when I broke free, I realized something. The fear had decreased. Not eliminated. But decreased. From a 10 to maybe a 7. And that was progress. The next episode, same thing. Fear at a 7. The one after, a 6. Slowly, gradually, over weeks, the fear intensity decreased. And something else happened. My daytime PTSD symptoms improved. The flashbacks became less frequent. Less intense. The hypervigilance decreased. I could hear loud noises without immediately panicking. Could smell diesel without being transported back. Could sleep without nightmares. Not completely. Not perfectly. But better. Significantly better. And my therapist explained why. Your brain has been doing its own EMDR. Its own exposure therapy. Through sleep paralysis. The entities you see are symbols. Representations of threat. And by experiencing them repeatedly, while maintaining some conscious awareness, you're teaching your amygdala that threat doesn't equal death. That fear is survivable. That you're safe now. This is the connection between PTSD and sleep paralysis. Trauma creates a hyperactive threat detection system. Sleep paralysis activates that system in a controlled way. With awareness. With distance. And repeated activation with safety slowly retrains the system. Teaches it that fear doesn't always mean danger. That immobility doesn't always mean death. That you can feel terror and survive. This is exposure therapy. But your brain is administering it. Without a therapist. Without a clinic. Just through the natural process of sleep paralysis. And for some people, like me, it works. The PTSD improves. The brain heals itself. But I need to be clear. This doesn't work for everyone. Some PTSD patients experience sleep paralysis, and it makes things worse. Re-traumatizes them. Amplifies their symptoms. There's no way to predict who will benefit and who will be harmed. And I'm not suggesting PTSD patients should seek out sleep paralysis. Should trigger it intentionally. That's dangerous. Potentially harmful. What I'm saying is if you have PTSD and you're experiencing sleep paralysis, it might not be just a symptom. It might be part of healing. Your brain trying to process. Trying to integrate. Trying to move forward. And understanding that can change how you experience it. can reduce the secondary trauma of thinking you're getting worse when you might actually be getting better. Here's what you need to know if you have both PTSD and sleep paralysis. First, work with a trauma-informed therapist. Someone who understands both conditions. Who can help you process what's happening. Second, document your episodes. Track frequency, intensity, content. Look for patterns. Look for changes over time. Third, practice grounding techniques for after episodes. Ways to reconnect with present reality. To remind yourself you're safe. You're here. You're now. Fourth, consider formal trauma therapy alongside the natural processing. EMDR. Prolonged exposure. Cognitive processing therapy. These can work synergistically with what your brain is doing naturally through sleep paralysis. And finally, be patient with yourself. Healing from trauma isn't linear. Some nights will be worse than others. Some episodes will feel like backsliding. But if you track over months, you might see overall improvement. Gradual but real. Your brain is working. Even when it hurts. Even when it's terrifying. It's working toward integration. Toward processing. Toward healing. Trust the process. Trust your brain. Even when it generates entities. Even when it creates terror. Because that terror is old. Stored. Being released. And release is necessary for healing. My sleep paralysis decreased after about 8 months. From nightly to weekly. Then monthly. Then occasionally. Now I experience it maybe once every few months. And when I do, I recognize it. Welcome it almost. Because I know what it is. My brain doing maintenance. Checking in. Making sure the trauma stays processed. Stays in the past. And my PTSD is manageable now. Not cured. PTSD doesn't cure. But manageable. I can function. Can work. Can maintain relationships. Can sleep most nights without nightmares. And I credit sleep paralysis for part of that healing. Strange as it sounds. Terrifying as it was. It helped. My next video covers other unexpected benefits of sleep paralysis. Increased creativity. Enhanced problem solving. Spiritual experiences. Because while sleep paralysis is predominantly negative, some people report positive outcomes. Growth. Insight. Transformation. And understanding the full spectrum helps us see the phenomenon completely. Subscribe so you don't miss it. Sleep well. Trust your healing. And remember, sometimes the worst symptoms contain the seeds of recovery. Sometimes terror is transformation in disguise. Sometimes the brain knows what it needs even when we don't understand why. I'll see you in the comments. And in the healing.